Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Eric with FisherDrumming.com, and I wanted to do a little special video today. This is going to be an interview instead of a drum lesson, so something totally different, and I have a very special guest, Steve Jocz, which is most notably known for being the drummer of Sum 41. So if you were a big fan of pop rock music in the early 2000s, late 90s, then you definitely know who Sum 41 is. I was a huge fan. Just to give a little background on Steve, Steve has toured the world, reached mainstream success as a drummer. He left the Rockstar life in 2013 to do his own thing and raise a family. After taking a break from the drums, though, Steve is back at work in his home studio, getting lots of attention on social media, doing epic drum covers, and making entertaining content for his fans, or playing shows with artists like the Vandals. So you can check his stuff out, and we'll post links in the description later at the end of the video or in the comments or something. But anyways, welcome, Steve. It's good to have you on here, man.
Very nice intro, bravo.
Cool, man. Yeah, so I was a big Sum 41 fan when I was like, it was those middle school, early high school years. I would rock out to you guys all the time. I think my favorite albums were All Killer No Filler and Does It Look Infected?
Yeah.
And I just want to get this cleared up. The first time that I saw you play was MTV music video, Fat Lip, and you're singing that verse on in the beginning of the song. And I just was like, dude, this drummer can play, and he actually sounded so cool when he sang, and I thought that was super legit. So you had me at that song, dude. I just want to say that was the first time I rocked out to Sum 41, and I was like, I dig this band.
That's funny. Where are you? You're in California, right?
Yeah, Southern California, LA
Yeah.
County.
So that video, we shot that video in Pomona, because the only place at the time that we had fans was in Pomona, of all places. Not in Toronto, where we're from, not like anywhere else really, but for whatever reason, it worked in Pomona, and we could sell out this club called the Glass House.
Oh, I know the
Um,
Glass House. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So way back, and that was off the heels of Half Hour Power, which was our initial EP. For whatever reason, the Pomona Glass House, we could sell that out. And so when it came time to shoot the video, they were like, "Where do you want to shoot the video?" We're like, "It's got to be Pomona because people will show up." And so that's why that video looks kind of like Southern California, and why it's
It does. That
it's
makes
in
sense.
Pomona because that's the only place we had fans at the time.
So
Which
was
is
that like right when you guys started to take off? So that was when you filmed that video, you guys hadn't hit that mainstream success. This is like that was like the beginning of it.
Yeah, I just Cone from the band did a video with an interview with somebody the other day, and I listened to a bit of it, and because we all have different memories, and mine isn't the best, but he said that the label had put us had us record all Half Hour Power, as like which is demos and stuff that we'd already had, and some of them we'd already recorded. They had us record it again in a professional studio, and we just started touring a lot. But we were touring in a van, and we went back and forth across the U.S. a ton and Canada, um, and that's kind of how we developed some fans around L.A. and then in Pomona. And we'd never been to Pomona before. We'd never heard of Pomona before growing up in Toronto, but you
Yeah.
know, it worked there. I think that style of music, all the bands that we were influenced by were pretty much from Southern California. No Effects, Bad Religion, Offspring, Pennywise, all that stuff is from that area. So the sound worked for it. But
Yes.
we did those tours. We toured with the Boss Tones. We toured with Face to Face. Um, and I think I'm remembering the timeline right. Maybe because I think it happened in that timeline. But and then we recorded All Killer No Filler, and then Fat Lip hadn't blown up yet, like it hadn't hit yet. That happened while we were on like the first Warp tour that we really did. We did maybe like a 3 weeks the summer before, But when we did basically the whole tour, that's when it was blowing up. We were number one on MTV when that was a thing, and but we're still playing the side stage. But we didn't
Really?
care.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, because that's what we were slotted on. Because
Right.
we
I
didn't
see.
hit yet. Our hit was
Right.
happening at the time, and so
Nice.
Kevin Lyman just kept us on the side stage, and we didn't care because when we went on stage, that became the main stage. Everybody would come. It was a massive
Right.
audience, but yeah, that was happening at the time
So how
on
many, that's super cool to hear that history and kind of like know the backstory. And how long did you actually play with Sum 41 when you guys first started the band and really took off to when you decided to leave the band? Like how many years was that? Was
I
it
don't
like
know.
20, was it like almost 20 years or something or
Oh, when we started the band, okay, so I met Derek and we started. I joined his band. He had a band called Casper with a K and an I.
Oh, so it
Uh,
wasn't okay, so it wasn't Sum 41
okay, so
technically.
yeah, the first band, and I was probably 13 when I met him, and then 12 or 13, and
Dang,
then
you guys were young.
yeah, they had this drummer who wasn't great. And so he asked me if I wanted to join his bands. And so that was kind of like a Nirvana meets Weezer thing. And it was
Mm.
me, Derek, and this other guy. And then we went to see No Effects we went to go to the Warp Tour to see No Effects in particular, but all those bands in 1996. And we came back and we're like, we got to start a band like that. And so
Mm.
I think it was just me, Derek, and the other guy, Grant, and all we did was just change the name and change the style slightly, and we're like, all of a sudden, we're a punk band. But
Hmm.
uh, yeah, I that so that happened in 1996, and then I left in 2013.
Nice,
So
nice. Okay. And so I can talk about Sum 41 and the history of all that, and I want to talk more about that too. But I also want to talk about you and your drumming, since this is a channel focused on drumming and really becoming a better drummer. And I kind of want to find out your story as a drummer. Like when did you first get into drums, and what was those beginning stages like for you when you first started? Did you take lessons, or how did you get into the drums in the first place?
I started when my dad's a guitar player, and I remember like seared into my memory. He tried to give me a guitar lesson when I was probably way too young to get into it, and I remember he was boy, this is a G chord. And he bought me this little kid guitar, and when he strummed it, all the strings broke. And I was like, there goes my career as a guitar player. And then, but I mean, I just didn't care. I didn't really pay attention to music at the time. Like it was
Uh-huh.
always fun and I had it in the background, but I never thought I wanted to be a musician. And then when I was 12, I ended up meeting somebody who had a drum kit. I was at
Mm.
camp, and there was a guy there, so you go for 2 weeks. It's like a sleepaway camp, but the counselors are there for the whole summer for 2 months. And I guess this guy brought his kit to the camp, and he had it set up in a cabin. There's a cabin at the top of this hill that nobody was using, and like you're in Canada in the forest, and there's a cabin, and then he opened the door, and there was the most, thinking back on it, ridiculous Neil Peart like proto toms and like tons of like just all
Way
these
too much stuff.
like the last thing you'd expect to see in a camp cabin. Um, but I was like, those are cool. And then I went home and told my parents that I wanted to be a drummer. And I was like, I want to be a karate guy. I want to do this. I want to do that. And they're like, we're not buying you a drum kit. And like this is ridiculous. But I guess it was annoying enough and persistent enough that my dad finally ended up. There's a lady at the church my parents went to that had an old kit in her basement that her son had. And she just gave it to him. And it was a bass drum and a snare drum. And then it had a cymbal that sounded like the lid of a tin can that stuck out of the pickup. But it was blue sparkle, and it was an
Nice.
old kit. So now that I think back, I probably and I sold it at a garage sale years later for like $1. It's probably like Art Blakey's Gretsch kit or something like that. That I just have, you know what I mean? It was like
But you were probably stoked, right? Even though it was a
I
piece of
loved
junk,
it
you
at
were
the
just like,
time,
heck yeah.
but after a while, like so that was my first kit, and then three doors down from my house, this guy moved in who taught drum lessons. And I went and saw him for maybe a year until I was like, I know how to do this. You know, I don't need lessons. And I'd already started playing in bands, and you know, he wanted me to read music and write it and stuff. And I was like, I don't want to do that.
You're like, I just
And
want
so,
to rock out. I
yeah.
know what I could figure it out, right?
So even though I had this resource two doors from my house,
I know that's
you know,
convenient. That's pretty amazing that he
yeah,
was
but
just two doors.
because I'm a moron, I didn't take advantage of it. But I started playing in bands right away, and so I was in a band in elementary school, and then I met Derek right sort of at the end of elementary school, and then I actually switched because I was in French immersion. Because in Canada, you know, you can do that. My parents put me in there, and I hated it.
Mm.
And so I wanted to leave and go to the English high school, whereas all the kids I was with went to the French high school. And I had friends of mine I was in a band with who were going to this school, Exeter. And then I met Derek and this guy Grant, and they were going to Exeter. And then Cone was also going to Exeter, and like so. I was like, I got to go to this other school. So I switched to the English school, and I'm glad I did. And that's when I was started playing with Derek and I knew Cone because he went to my school, but he was in the English side. And then and Dave went to that. So me, Dave, Cone, and Derek all were going to the same high school, but we were in different bands. Derek and I were in a band. Cone was in a band. The bass player Cone was in his band, and then Dave was in his band, the guitar player. And Sum 41 was one thing, and then Cone's band was a different thing, and Dave's band was like almost like a Rage Against the Machine
Mm.
cover band, really. Um, and that's why like Dave's got all those chops. Like he could do that when we were, you know, like 14 or whatever. Um, and so that's how that happened. And then I started playing in those bands, and we played a lot around town. And we live about 45 minutes outside of Toronto, and we would go to the city, and all our separate bands would get in that. We would rent. I remember one time we rented a school bus, and we all got on the bus, and all our friends and fans got on the bus, and we drove to the city, and we're doing Battle of the Bands and all this stuff. And that's how we initially met our manager, and that's who helped us kind of get um, uh, the ability to then record demos and start shopping to labels and all that stuff. But for me and my drumming, it started, yeah, like when I was 12, I took lessons for a bit, but then I just was like a guy in a band. You know, was okay for what it was at the time. But then when we started touring, like you get better because you're playing all the time, and you're playing to a click track. I always play to a click track. So you're playing to a click track, like 300 shows a year kind of thing. You get pretty tight. But
Right.
then when we started touring, you know, I met people like Josh Freese, who's the drummer for the Vandals. He's now the drummer
Hmm.
for the Foo Fighters,
Yeah,
drummer for
he's great.
everybody.
Yeah, he's a great drummer, huh? Yeah.
Amazing. And then
Yeah.
he's always busy with other bands, so he would go and play with like Devo, let's say. And then Brooks Wackerman would come and fill his spot. And I was like, who the hell is this guy now? And so just by watching those guys, becoming friends with them, they would let us watch. We would literally just watch Josh and Brooks. We'd sit on the drum riser and I would just watch. Um, and and uh and just seeing what he was doing with a similar kind of music, I was like, like it kind of allowed me
So
to
you
like
were
level
learning, yeah, so you were learning just by
up
watching them
by
and watching
watching,
Josh.
and I didn't necessarily talk to either of them. I don't know if I felt like embarrassed or whatever. I just kind of wanted them to like me, so I didn't want to punish them with drum questions. I also didn't really think about it. Like I didn't really care to talk about it so much. I just wanted to hang out and joke around.
So wait,
So I
Josh, at that time though, really quick, Josh was playing for the Vandals, you said? When you
yeah. So
got when
Josh was like the Vandals drummer from the time he was, I don't know, I'm going to say 16 or something like that. But then because he's so good, and through, he started doing studio work and then became
I see.
a studio and touring drummer for other acts. But like his home base was the Vandals, very much so.
Gotcha.
Uh, and then Brooks was a similar kind of thing. They found Brooks. I mean, Brooks comes from a very musical family. His brothers are drummers. His dad was a drum teacher. I think his other brother is, I don't know, some musician. Very musical family. And he lived like in Long Beach area too growing up. And so they found him, but he was playing with Infectious Grooves and Suicidal Tendencies. And then he started doing a bunch of other stuff. Shortly after I met him, he joined Bad Religion, and now he's in Avenged Sevenfold, which is great because I mean, he's a great like technical um, drummer, and so he's perfect for Avenged. But
Hmm.
those two guys in particular,
So those were
I would
two really big influences on you
massive,
in your
and
drumming.
like yeah, and I like they're friends, like I
Right.
mean, they're great, and it's good to have had those two guys. They neither of them were like, all right, Steve, we're gonna sit you down and show you how to do it, but they were both like, come watch and hang out, and just being able to do that for like so many times, like countless times. Because then we brought the Vandals on a tour with us
Mm.
after the Warped Tour, and then I started playing with them, and then you're like, oh yeah, okay, this is how he's doing that because he actually forces you to learn how to play the part in the song. But that experience really helped my drumming. And then
Hmm.
I don't know how far you want to jump ahead, but then when I stopped playing after I left the band, like I stopped playing. I didn't play at all. I played 3 or 4 shows with the Vandals in like 8 years or something like that.
I
And
do
it,
wait really quick before we go there. I wanted to ask you one more thing about the creative process of
oh yeah,
coming up with drum parts and some 41 and stuff like that. Um, I do want to talk about that next, but I wanted to ask you this while we're on the Sum 41 topic. When you guys would play songs, come up with new material, was it pretty natural for you to just go along, you jam with the guys, you're coming up with things on the spot? Were you contributing, uh, or were they often saying, "Hey, I have this drum part or this drum idea. Can you play it like this?" Or was it more of up to you and your creative freedom? You guys have been playing for so long, it kind of probably gelled naturally too,
it
huh?
was a bit of both. Like sometimes, like Derek is the primary songwriter, so sometimes he would send something. Like we have a song called "We're All to Blame," and I remember when he sent the demo, like the intro on the ride cymbal and the gung 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 gung, that stuff. That was all on the demo that he initially sent. So he would sometimes be like, "This is the idea," and I maybe embellish it or whatever, or I just play
Mm-hmm.
what he had.
Mm-hmm.
Other times he would come with a song and he would just maybe have the verse and the chorus and he'd just play the chords in the jam session and we would work it out together. Like I mean sometimes the part just is like the obvious thing that would maybe go there.
Right.
And then as far as fills and stuff like that, like sometimes I would have stuff and we would go into the studio with it, and then other times, like I said, we played with a click all the time. So in the studio, like we played with a click all the time live. So in the studio, we'd record the song, and then sometimes they would be in the control room. And they'd say, "Let's just get a bunch of fills, and we'll pick ones we like." And because I could play with the click, like you could just do
They can cut and
takes
paste
of
it
that
in. Yeah.
section, and they could take the one they like. And so
Right.
I would do 5 takes of my ideas. And then
Mm-hmm.
I would sit out there and you got the headphones on. You can't see them and you'd have two non-drummers in the control room doing this. Like, okay, do like and then, and then you'd have and then like and it's not like their ideas were bad or not, but they're playing it on their lap. And I'd be like, what hit is what? Like, is
Yeah.
this the snare? Like use 2 different surfaces so I know what I'm hitting because it all sounds like one thing. So we would do it like that as well, and they would come up with ideas. I was not precious about like this is my thing and only I come. No, like
It
if
was like,
Cone
what's
came
best
up,
for the song? Yeah.
yeah, I didn't care if Cone came up with a good idea. I'd be like, okay, let's use that. Or if it was Dave, or if it was the janitor outside, like it didn't matter. So a bit of both. We would either
Cool.
Derek would either be like, this is the song, um, and that happened, and then maybe I would add like my fail or my way of my feel, and then other
Hmm.
times it
Hmm.
would be like let's just we would just do it together in a practice room
Which studio did you guys record All Killer No Filler at?
in Toronto at a studio called Metal Works, which is in actually so outside of Toronto, a place called Mississauga, and it's owned by I can't remember his name, Gil, something like that. He was the drummer for a Canadian like metal rock band called Triumph in the 80s.
Mm,
And it was like a full professional studio. So we recorded it there. I
cool.
think we also recorded all Half Hour Power there, but I can't remember. But with Jerry, he came from LA and was there for a month or two, and we did it all there.
Nice. So you guys, so then, yeah, so you're playing in Sum 41, you guys reach massive success, you tour in the world. What ultimately brought you to the place where you were like, I want to take a break or I want to move on? Because you left the band, right? And then you took some time away from the drums, and you were about to get into that before I cut you off.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the simplest answer is that I was burnt out and I needed a break. And I had like a baby and a family and stuff, and I was just like, I'm gonna do this for a while.
Hmm.
And then I got two sons, and then the other one came, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna focus on these guys. And so we were in California, and I actually ended up getting into real estate in a way. Well, I was doing that, but we were in Palm Springs, and my wife and I were restoring these mid-century modern houses. That's what she does. She's a designer, and
A lot of those in LA for sure.
yeah, well, in Palm Springs, there's tons, and so
Oh
we we
yeah.
we did a bunch. And then I started doing the real estate side because it just was this natural extension of it. And it was a lot easier than busting concrete and carrying drywall and things like that. So I did that and it was fun and I did well. But then she always wanted the kids to have the sort of freedom that you get just in Australia and like the natural outdoorsiness of it all. And so we tried Australia in 2019 and then went back to the States and then COVID happened and then we're like, let's go back. So that's where I am right now. That's where we live. And while we were here, I mean, I was just like, some guy had hit me up on Instagram, and I didn't pay any attention to music. I didn't pay any attention to the drums. I was like, I don't do this anymore.
How long, wait, how long did you take a break completely from playing? Like, how long was it, would you say, that you didn't touch a drumstick and play and do any drums?
Well, uh, eight
Was
years,
so it was like, oh, that's a significant amount of time. Yeah.
with the exception that I did play like four shows with the Vandals because they
Okay.
called. But leading up to that, I had not been practicing. I didn't
Yeah.
own a practice pad, you know.
Did it
And so
feel weird jumping back in, like playing a big stage, playing like all these songs and you haven't even been playing? Was it hard? Was it weird?
it
Were
was
you rusty?
rough. And then the worst part was that the first show, because they're like, "Hey, we're going to Hawaii. Do you want to go to Hawaii?" I'm like, "Yeah,
Oh
let's
yeah, I
do it."
want to go.
Because I'm really good friends with those guys, and I really
That's
love
cool.
them. So, like, if they want to just hang out, I'm like, I'll go hang out. I'll be a roadie. I don't care. So they're like, let's go. We're going to Hawaii. We need a drummer. Do you want to come? So I went, and then like, it was rough. And then but they asked me to come back, and then a couple months later, they were like, we're going to Europe, and we did maybe four shows, England and Germany,
Wow.
Italy. I was like, well, I haven't been to Europe in a long time. I'll definitely do that. But aside from and then as soon as I got home, like I didn't touch anything again. So aside from those shows, I didn't play anything for years, and I didn't own a drum kit, and so And so then we moved to
Pretty
Australia, and
amazing.
this guy reached out to me and he was like, "Hey, I'm a drummer in Toronto. Like, how do I get into the scene?" And I was like I don't know. Like, I have no idea. I'm not in any scene. Any scene that has me as a member is not a
He's like,
scene I
dude, but
want.
you're Stevo. He's like, you
Yeah,
have to
I'm
know.
like, he's like, well, you clearly must know. I'm like, I have no clue. And but I didn't want to write back and say I have no clue. So I wrote back this sort of long email where I was like, here's how Sum 41 got signed. We at first sent out a demo tape and got no response at all. And we had been just for fun because we're stupid and we're teenage boys, like we would videotape ourselves like egging houses and driving around and squirt people with water guns and doing all sorts of stupid stuff as you do. And
Hmm.
somebody had the brilliant idea to send that, like edit that together. This is
Wow.
before Jackass. This is before YouTube. This is like the internet.
Yeah,
We filmed it on a video camera with a tape in
the
it, and
tape.
then somebody edited it together and put it on a VHS tape. And
Wow.
we put our music on top of it and mailed that. And I think, and this is the key to all of the things, because you see people, and I mean, it's not always the key, but this is the key. The key is personality, right? Like the music needs to be good, but you also need to be something people will like.
Hmm.
And when you just send a demo out, it's like, well, who are these guys? What is this? Like, I don't get it. You send the tape of us showing you how silly we were and we're all friends, and like a label person just like, I get it. And
Right.
we went from having no interest to having every label in America be like, we want to sign you right now. We'll give you whatever you want.
Wow.
And so I remembered that and I told that story and then I said, listen, it's easier and harder now because it's easier because you don't need to, like, you can film it on your phone and upload it directly to YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, whatever.
Right.
Uh, and you can get your personality out there and you can show that you're a drummer. The hard part is that everybody's doing it. But
Hmm.
it doesn't matter. Do it anyway. Worst case scenario, one of your covers or one of your original songs gets 20,000 views, gets 10, like that's possible.
Right.
And, and then you can start, and then worst case scenario, you get no views, but somebody goes and looks at your Instagram page and they just see tons of videos showing your drumming, showing your personality. They go, oh, I like this guy. I want to work with this guy. So
Right.
I sent him that email. He didn't even get back to me.
Really?
but, but, but,
You're like, what a jerk.
well, no, I just thought it was funny. But I said to myself, what are people doing now? And this is probably like right 2020, March 2020, whenever it was. And I look and I saw that Estepario Siberiano guy.
Oh
And
yeah.
this before he had millions of followers. He had like maybe 80,000 followers or something. And I was like, holy shit, people are really good now. Like what has happened?
That dude's
And
an
then
animal. That dude's just an animal. I mean,
but there's so many animals. It's
there's so
goddamn.
many. Oh, I know. It's amazing, right? Once you go down the rabbit hole of Instagram drummers, you're just like, wow,
And
there's
then the
so
other thing
many.
that I discovered is that there's people like yourself, like Mike Johnston, like JP Bouvet, like my drum teacher that I have regular lessons with, Tim Metz. I do jazz lessons with him. Like there's people who've done all this stuff online this whole time while I was off doing other things
Mm,
and created all this information and material um, to help you get better. It's like
hmm.
there's so much there. And so I went, all the stuff. Like I used to watch like drum educational videos from the 90s. And a lot of the time, like I was like, what are they doing? Like they're not even really showing me the thing they're doing. They're just playing.
Mm,
It's all very complicated looking, whereas people, I think, are breaking. You can find a person who will break it down the way you can learn. maybe these
Yeah.
10 people are doing it in a way that doesn't click with you, but this one guy, these three people do it your way, and you go, ah, and
Yeah.
it, that, and so I saw for like, oh my God, like all the things that can allow me to get so much better are right here, and I'd be
Right here.
stupid not to take advantage of that. And so to bring it all back, like that's why I started getting into the drums again because I started learning stuff that, because listen, when you're in a band and you're me, you play the songs that the band does, and then you don't do anything else. Like I didn't take lessons. I didn't like. I would pick up things from other drummers that we toured with, or maybe albums that I liked. But I never like when we were done to. We used to tour so much. We'd be gone for 2 months, and I'd have 2 weeks off. Like those 2 weeks, I'm not looking
Yeah.
at
You're
drumming.
probably fried. Yeah. You
Yeah,
do. Yeah.
and then on tour we didn't. I didn't practice because I'm partying. I'm doing stuff. I'm sightseeing. I'm going to dinners. I'm doing all the
Right.
stuff I'm doing in your band. Whereas now I don't do that stuff. So I've got tons of time to focus on all these other things.
Right.
The one thing that I realized when I started playing again is that my technique was terrible. I hit really hard and I held the sticks way too tight. And when I first picked up the drumsticks, I put my iPhone in front of me and I filmed it. And I look back and it's awful, right? And I had really bad tendonitis in my left arm.
From
And
squeezing so hard and
reason,
all that energy shooting up into your arm.
yeah, so I've got like I used to hold, can you see that? Like I would hold it
Yep.
like that,
Right.
right? And like full like a German,
No gap.
no gap,
Yeah.
and like whack. And so I had to retrain.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what I've been doing the last like 3, 4 years now. Like my hands look completely different. So now when I hold this stick, like it's I don't even see that, but
Yep.
like
You're
both hands,
fulcruming differently. You have an open grip.
yeah, and
Yeah.
like you really had to strengthen the fulcrum. But I
Yep.
didn't know that,
It's
and I,
amazing. Technique is so important, and you you do unfortunately get into drumming, and most guys just are having fun and they're doing a lot of stuff. They're actually playing songs, but they never spend the time to learn the technique that makes drumming easier, and it ends up holding you
yeah,
back or causing some type of injury, and it's harder to
exactly.
relearn it later.
I was actually talking to Josh about this. I saw him when I went to go. I just played a show with the Vandals in Japan, and I was in LA for a couple of days before that, and I saw Josh. And like I guess now because I'm more into it, I ask more questions. But I asked him if he's ever had any like issues or whatever, and he said, fortunately, when I started playing, because he's older than me, but when he started playing, maybe he was 10 or something, like he just naturally started off with good technique and he just plays with good
Really?
technique. So he hasn't had any issues. And then Brooks, I mean, Brooks is just an immaculate technician, and it just watching him is so smooth and fast and easy, flawless. But he had like traditional instruction.
You said
He
his dad was a drum instructor, right?
dad was a drum instructor. His brother Chad Wackerman is like a studio guy. But they all went and they took lessons from this guy Murray Spivak, who was he did a lot of audio for movies in the 50s and stuff, like soundtrack, not soundtrack stuff, but like sound effects and things. But he
Foley
was
artist or something.
Yeah, but he was like a master snare drum,
Wow.
technical guy, and he had a method of how to teach great hand technique, and the whole family did it. Brooks was talking to me about that, and his brother Chad actually teaches a course online on how to approach it. But it's very similar to what I've been doing
Hmm.
with my drum teacher when I started taking jazz lessons. Because I was like, okay, who's got good hands? Jazz guys have good hands. So I started taking jazz lessons. And basically, all I do is I do this thing called the rudiment ritual. I do that every day, which takes this is how it warm up 20 minutes rudiment ritual. You run through 86 rudiments and you do it over a bossa nova beat on the
Nice.
hi-hat. And so I do it.
Nice.
I don't do it super fast, but maybe between 140 and 160. I've seen other people who can do it all the way up to 200. Like it's crazy. But you go through drag rudiments, flam rudiments, roll rudiments, and it just goes on and on. And that helps. I really pay attention to the accent level. So like, when I
Yes.
accent, I go high, but loose, like with control, loose with control.
Yep.
Um, like you're not straining. Anytime I strain, I slow it down. I don't care about going fast anymore. I just want
Right.
it to feel good, sound good,
Right.
be in control. And the other thing I do are the Wilcoxon snare etudes, which are great because if you do, like often people say, okay, these you need to learn these rudiments. Like you might get a drum teacher's like you have to learn your single stroke roll, your doubles, your paradiddles, and so on, flams, blah blah blah. You don't want to just do those, right? The genius of Wilcoxon is he takes them and he creates musical phrases out of them. So they're actually fun to play
Yep.
and they sound cool and they help you with accents and your feel and coordination and all that stuff. So I do
That's
those.
the ultimate goal. Yeah. That's the ultimate goal.
That's and
Yeah.
that's how I warm up. And it takes about half an hour to just warm up. And that's when I'm being good, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's
Mm-hmm.
like the ideal warm up is to do those things. I don't always do the full ritual. Maybe I'll do half of it or three-quarters of it or whatever. And those two things, but those two things combined have really helped my hands. And then I do like jazz solos and jazz like comping and things. But that ability and technique translated to punk and rock and metal, it makes that stuff so much easier because you can still hit hard, but the stick is absorbing most of the energy. It's not going in your arm, and also like you can play fast with fairly low effort. Like the
Yep.
rolls that I do, like if you
Yep.
look, I should probably post a video from the top. I have a camera up here so people can see if they care. Like when I posted a Offspring song. So somebody was like, play an Offspring song. So I did Staring at the Sun, which is a pretty fast song. It's got fast rolls in it. But when I'm doing the rolls, like you can still, that gap is there. Like I'm doing it like this,
Yes.
very flowy. And then when I'm playing the hi-hat part, like the punk rock, like do-ga, 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 do-ga. Like I
Yes.
have friends in bands that I grew up listening to and who I love and I'll always love playing, but like they play like this. And it's painful to watch because
Yeah.
they're like, when
So much pressure, so flexing all of those muscles and
listen,
straining.
you do almost like a
Molar
push
technique.
pull
Yeah.
catch thing. Get
Yeah.
the snake.
Right.
Like it's so much easier. I did this when I was in 740. My right hand was pretty good. It was my left hand that was the big problem. But what I've been doing is getting the left hand, as close to the right as I can, while also improving the right. But things like that help a lot, particularly at high speeds. And that's true for punk, it's true for metal, it's true for jazz, anything fast. Like, you
Yeah.
use your fingers,
Yep.
but you want to do that kind of emotion on the hi-hat
Yep.
and it's all these things combine and work together. But I think when I realized that, the snare drum is like home base in many ways. And so if you
Hmm.
can get good at that, you can extend to other things. Um,
That's great. So you actually got more into the technique and really learning rudiments and stuff after your break and after you started really just studying the drums, getting back now diving back into social media, seeing how far guys have taken it online, how information's so accessible, and that's also motivating. And you can learn a ton. It is a great time to be a drummer. I think that's why drummers are getting so much better. All musicians are getting so much better. They're all watching each other, and you have this open form kind of communication on social media. Everybody watches each other
Absolutely.
plays and learns. And it goes back to what you said with, the personalities. Like some guys are just going to have a great personality that you connect with and you're going to learn from better than another guy. And it's cool
And
that
everybody's
people,
different. Like you might like somebody like me might be like too silly or something. They might want somebody more serious. The reason why I picked Tim Metz to be my jazz teacher is because I like he's got a sense of humor. He's funny,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
but
Keep
he's
it light,
also
keep it fun.
keep it fun, and he's also really good. Like he's a great jazz player, great technician. He's knowledgeable, but he's very like I can just like shoot the shit with him and joke around.
Right.
And some jazz guys, just like some of anybody, like sometimes take it a bit too seriously, and that's just not
Yeah.
gonna work for me.
Right.
But there might be another student out there who's like, I don't want to joke around. I am serious. I this is art, damn it. And you know,
Yeah.
so everybody's different, but that's my point. It's like some personalities are gonna connect with you better. And the beauty of having so many and the curse of having so many is that there's just, there's a lot to choose from, but you will and can find someone. And that it's great. I mean, that's like also, I think because I don't tour all the time and I'm not in a band, what I've gotten into and what I'm kind of addicted to now is learning. Like as
Yes.
soon as I learn
Becomes very
something,
fun.
like I want to learn how to rearrange it a different way. Or I want to like there's all these
Yeah.
songs, it doesn't matter what kind of music it is. Like jazz is fun because it's so foreign to me. And
Hmm.
now, like, originally, like I would hear something and be like, I don't even know what's going on there. Like this is a completely foreign language. Whereas now I can listen to stuff and be like, oh yeah, I can figure that out. Like by ear, I can figure
Yeah.
that out. It might take me 2 weeks, but I'll figure it out. And now because unlike stupid me, I got the curtain here, unlike stupid me from when I was a kid, all the things that my drum teacher was trying to get me to learn when I was 12, I'm learning now. So I can read, I can write, and I can, like do all the rudiments, all the things that I do think are, a good foundation to build up from. Because once you hit a certain level, at least for me, if you can't read, you're gonna have a really hard time figuring it out because like when
Right.
you do Latin stuff, when you do jazz,
Right.
some metal stuff, like it's so intricate and complex. If you just see the notation, you go, the kick drum lands on the of
Right.
three. That's
Right.
it. And then
Yeah.
everything goes like "Guh-guh,"
It
and you
just
can
makes it so much easier. Right.
and I don't think the drums are different than any other instrument. Like my niece plays, she plays the oboe in like the orchestra, and she's can sight read and do all this awesome stuff. It's like there's no reason why the drums can't be that as well. Just it doesn't have to be the oboe or the trumpet or the piano or whatever. Like I don't sight read generally like when I'm playing, but it helps me
When you're trying
um,
to learn a specific
when I'm trying to
part,
learn
break
stuff.
something down. Right.
Yeah, and then I taught my first drum lesson online the other day
Awesome.
because I would like to get into that. And a lot of the stuff we just mentioned is stuff that I'm happy I've done all this work because I'm like we got to work on your hand technique, and we
Right.
need to get to where you can learn to read the music because it's just going to make it so much easier.
Right.
And drum notation looks scary, but it's not. It's
It
easy.
right. Just
It's
counting the
just
different rhythms, and once you see where they're placed on the right lines,
it's a
you
time
can do it.
grid. You
Right.
don't have to put keys. You don't have to.
Yeah.
It's
It's
time grid.
simpler. Yeah, it's
Very
simpler
simple. And
than
so every day, I like so the rudiment ritual. I do it 90% of it by memory because I'm just learning the like that. It's long, so it takes a long time. It's taken me like 2 years to get to this point, but.
yeah, that's a lot of rudiments to learn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but if you do it every day, you do memorize it, and they change from like like into a triplet feel, like it goes all over the place. Well, the bass drum remains static. So finally learning the last couple pages. So I do those I'll just glance at them and remind myself. But the Wilcoxon, like I don't. There's 150 rudiments in that book, and I don't know how many are in the other book. But I'm not gonna. I don't want to remember that. Like I don't want to have to remember, I don't want to take up my brain space, which is limited, filling it with that. So it's easier to just keep it in the book. I open the book and I just read it and do it, and then I turn the
Right.
page.
Yeah, and it's like once you get all of that vocabulary in your head and you know what it feels like, then it's so much easier to create your own little phrases, musical
Of course.
ideas around the toms,
Yeah,
and it starts to come out naturally, right? After
it
all
does.
that's internalized.
And the one thing that I noticed that I started doing, and it wasn't something I started doing deliberately, maybe in the last few months really, is I started reading it and saying it and playing it at the same time. So I can look at the
It's a good
page and
tip.
go, like, and if you can do that and have this, like, it comes in
Mm,
this way and goes out via your hands and your mouth, that is really,
yeah,
that unlocks some kind of improvisational
right,
freedom.
right.
And getting to improvisation, that's another reason why I wanted to just dip my toe into jazz is because in Sum 41, everything is rehearsed and nothing changes. The set, like when I play with the Vandals, they're like, "Oh, what songs do you want to do tonight? And what order do you want to do them in?" And they like mix it up, and you know what I mean? Like it changes. Sum
Mm-hmm.
41 is the same, like the
Mm,
same set that we at least when I was in the band, like, and that's why our shows were super tight. But
mm,
like same order, with maybe we rearrange one song or something, but like in general, everything was the same. Whether we were in America, maybe you change it on the country. Like if we toured in England and some certain songs did better there, we change it
mm.
cater to them. But that entire UK tour, that would be the set. And I know a lot of bands do that, but a lot of bands don't. But for us, that was certainly the case. There wasn't a ton of just like jamming and, because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times jamming sounds like shit anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
that's how stuff works. Like if my advice, if you're in a band, play to a click, keep it tight. Like you will set yourself apart from other bands because you like we would do these big dramatic pauses like na 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 na. Everyone's
And you're still going.
and we all come in at the same time.
Yeah.
But what the audience doesn't know is that we go na 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 go 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 go. There's a
Yeah.
click in all
Right.
of our ears.
Yeah.
Mine's obviously the loudest, but Derek, the singer, and the other guys, Tom later. All I don't know if they still. I'm sure they still do, but we would have that go 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 in the ear because we were ear monitors, and that's how it would come in so tightly, and it man, it makes you so much more professional sounding if you can do stuff like that. If you're not wavering or slowing us, like
Absolutely.
so. That's one thing that we did, and that was great. So that helped me get pretty tight. But my improvisational, like, let me just like freely play the drums, like that was completely non-existent. And so that's a muscle that like people I think assume like, oh, you can play the drums. Like just do a thing. If you don't regularly do a thing, you don't know how to do that.
That's such a good one. That's so true. I
And so
think that's
yeah.
that's like a lot of drummers, to be honest. That's actually their worst nightmare.
Yeah.
Somebody being like, "Hey, can you play us a solo, or can you just go off and just flow or something like that?" And it's very difficult if you don't know what you're doing, if you haven't really learned how to improvise, because it's its own little art. It's its own. And you're right, jazz is so much about improvising. Um,
Yeah, and listening, right? Because I think
right.
because I'm in like a little jazz combo thing, just people that live around here that are all interested in doing it. We're all new to it, so it's like we're all comfortable being in our like little. It's like an exercise for musicians more than just performing for other people, which I think is basically what jazz is anyway.
Yeah,
A lot of the time,
it's true, huh?
you're like that you're playing with and for other musicians,
You're
but
like riding that wave and you're just
yeah.
like enjoying the moment and just it's an experience. Yeah.
But you want to maintain because without structure, it just falls apart and
Right.
it sounds bad. But I'm doing it as an exercise to force me into a situation where they're like, we're trading right now. We're trading fours. Like it's you, like here we go.
Right.
And you have to really, unlike in my band, like after a while, you played 2,000 shows. Who knows how many shows we played? Um, it's all muscle memory. I'm like watching what's happening in the audience. I'm talking to my drum tech. I'm having a drink. Like I am on autopilot here, right? Because
Yeah.
I just, I look like I'm rocking out, but I'm like thinking about how I got to do my laundry or something. Whereas with jazz and stuff like that, like you have to listen. Like you're listening, like you got to watch the soloist and you're comping off of that. And then when you're trading, you're like talking back and forth. And so I'm not going to say I'm going to do all this. I'm not good at jazz. Like I'm not, this is all just an exercise to help me get better. But
Right.
it's just funny that you have to be really present, really in the moment, and really pay attention. Which, like a great example, is there's like of like a modern thing is the Chick Corea uh, acoustic band with Dave Weckl, and like they're all just like look like
Mm.
there's a lot of old jazz recordings like they're from the 50s or whatever, and
Yeah. Oh, I love watching Dave Weckl. Yeah, he's a
but
master.
he's like they're just like looking at each other, playing off each other,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you can feel this energy between them, and they're really
Yeah.
connected, and I think that's fun. So I got into that. And listen, I got into it not because I like, I'm a jazz guy now. I got into it because I was like, this is gonna help me become a better drummer. I remember a thing Brooks said, not to me, I just heard him say it on an interview maybe, or but he was like, learning Latin rhythms
Mm-hmm.
made everything else easier because they're so hard. If you can do
Right.
that, you can kind of approach anything in the rock realm. Like some of it's like,
It's
listen,
true.
metal can be really like technical and difficult physically and mentally and
Mm-hmm.
coordination wise. But if you can do all that stuff, like I did like a I figured out a Philly Joe Jones solo the other day and can play it, not as fast as Philly Joe, but I can play it. And then I remember I wanted to learn something and it was kind of weird. And I was like, oh, I don't think I learned that. I was like, wait a minute, I can totally learn that. I just learned the Philly Joe thing, and and I was like, this actually isn't that hard. I can do it. And the one gift that rock drummers generally give you is that everything's loud. Like jazz solo, you have to deal with accents and like they're so
Right. You know, and that must be as a
oh
rock. Hey, you know what? And that's a really quick. I want to just make a note of that. You're a pop punk rock drummer, and then you start learning jazz, and so it's like almost like opposite. Like in rock drumming, your kick and snare are the dominant, right? And then you go to jazz, and it's like your kick is very subtle. Your right
you're right.
hand. What'd you say?
The ride cymbal is kind of the beat all of a sudden.
Right. Now your ride becomes the focus in your right hand. And then if a lot of, well, not I wouldn't say a lot, but some rock drummers aren't used to keeping time with the left foot, and then that's very important in jazz. And it's just kind of backwards, right? And then also it's like instead of the down beats, it's the off beats that are getting the focus in
Absolutely.
jazz. So it's just
Um,
this different feel all around.
well, the one thing I found, and I find challenging is playing quietly, first of all, and then playing quietly at sometimes fast speed, right? Because it requires, and I'm not there yet. I'm not pretending I'm there. This is where I'm going, right? This is where I want to get going.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right? This is the destination. But like to play with that level of control quickly, quiet, because you usually like there's like a guy with a guitar and like a tiny little amp. Sometimes the bass player doesn't have an amp; he's just got a double bass. Like you have to
Right.
play quiet, but you have to play, quickly sometimes, and I find that challenging. Keeping time with the left foot was something that I absolutely cheated with in the band. Like I would keep it, and then I would go to do like a fill, and it would stop. And
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
now I'm very much like try to keep the foot throughout the whole song go, and that's why by doing that, weirdly, it turns any exercise into an independence exercise.
Right.
Like even just doing like paradiddles, like rudiments, Wilcoxon, whatever. If you just keeping the time going, like you can do it with your hands. As soon as you add the left foot and the hi hat, it can all fall apart. So that's something that most people should just try and incorporate because it
I
makes the
absolutely, yeah, agree with that, man.
easier.
Yeah,
And
everybody should really try to work on time with the left foot, keeping it. And there's a beautiful thing that happens when get that control, and you feel like you always know where you are. There's always a sense of time. It improves your time, and it improves your internal time of how it's difficult when you're playing complex patterns and you're keeping time with your left foot. But if you can make it all work, um, it's a really cool, ability, and it always keeps you solid. But it's always
Yeah.
something that you have to practice. You have to practice it a lot.
Yeah, so what I try to do is I just try and incorporate to all, like it's not like I'm gonna practice this. I just
You just
try
always have it.
to
Yeah.
do it so that it's just a part of what I do. And
Right.
it does help. And then eventually, like if you just start doing it all the time, it sucks for like the first couple weeks or whatever, and then you just start doing it. Your brain just is like, ah, it's fine.
Yeah, you
And
can
then
almost autopilot that. Yeah.
yeah, and as soon as you can like so getting back to the ritual that I do, the rudiment ritual, like you do this so it's like boom, 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 boom.
Right.
Like I don't even think I'm doing that anymore, right? Like it just
Right.
happens. Like
Yep.
that's just happening. I'm not, my brain is not thinking that at all. It's thinking about what my hands are doing. And then because you're doing all these different patterns over, it helps. So that's helped a lot with my left foot as well.
Yep. That's good stuff, man. Great advice. We've gone over a lot of good drumming tips, things to practice. So you guys heard it from Stevo, man. Technique, rudiments, all of that stuff. Diving into jazz, subjects that you haven't gotten into, all help expand your drumming. Latin, right? Difficult stuff, but it's really, really exciting how your drumming just takes off when you get into those other subjects. And so, Steve, I wanted to ask you, when you were getting back on social media, you had this huge break from the drums, and then you started. When did you start posting your own stuff? And of your drumming, and now you have a lot of traction. You have a lot of fans online that watch your videos. You have some pretty epic drum covers that you're doing, and you've been doing that for a while. And it seems like your Instagram's getting a lot of attention, growing really good. So when did you start posting and stuff? And tell us your Instagram name so everybody can follow you too.
Oh
That
yeah,
hasn't
it's the Stevo32. Stevo is Stevo 32. The Stevo 32.
32.
And I think it's because somebody else took Stevo 32. But anyway, I maybe a year ago or so, it hasn't been that long, but the band announced that they were splitting up. And I'd already been getting back into the drums, but I hadn't been posting anything. And I have this one fan in the Ukraine. Her name's Graf Valeria. That's her username. And she's always like, she's always posting about me and everything. And my wife, after the band announced that and this is right when the Russians decided to invade her country. And
Mm.
so now her favorite bands like announced they're breaking up. And my wife was just like, "You got to post something for Valerie. Like, you got to do
Oh,
it." So,
yeah.
so I was like, "All right, I'll go post something." So I went downstairs and I just did. I just was like, "Hey, I heard the band's splitting up, but they had a great run. I always loved this song." And I just did like a 30-second clip of me playing "Still Waiting," which is one of my favorite songs from when I was in the band.
Mm.
And I said, "This is for her." And then I got like a great response. And so then I was like, "Oh, okay. So maybe I'll start posting some more." But the other reason why is because it almost like I'm just thinking of it as it's a way to like maintain a standard of playing ability. So if it's good enough to post, then to what I think is good enough. Like they're not all going to be perfect because I'm not going to sit down here. God damn it! I'm not going to sit down here for like hours and hours and do 100 takes, but maybe I'll
Right.
do 10 takes. And if it sounds good enough to post, I'm like, oh, I've got that. Whereas if you don't have that accountability, like who knows? Like you could be in your head all the time. You could be like, this is great, even though it's like the kick and the snare flamming, or you know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm doing it almost as an exercise to like maintain a level of ability. And like, okay, I played like I did a Tool um, cover of a Tool drum solo. So very like kind of complex.
Yes, complex stuff. I saw that. It was epic.
Yeah. And like, do I have it? Yes or no? I think so. So if so then I posted it because I think, it's cool. People maybe would want to see me do that, but also it's like proving to myself I have it good enough to be able to show other people. And if you're not playing live all the time, it helps maintain that. And so I recommend that people do that, whether you have 100,000 followers or you have 10 followers. It's just a good.
100%. That's great
Um,
advice. Yeah.
Also, if you don't want to do that, for sure, record yourself with video and watch back after.
Hmm.
'Cause the way it sounds when you're doing it in your head versus how it actually sounds, after the fact, it might be different. So it's good to just have at least that level of accountability, but I do recommend you get it to a point where you're confident putting it out there and then watch it. And like, if it sounds like, does it sound like you could have recorded it on the record? And if you can get it close, then that's cool. I think that's good. And if it isn't, go back and practice it some more.
Right. But it's a good exercise to really hear yourself because oftentimes you play something and you're like, oh, that sounds great. And then you actually record yourself and you realize, oh, wow, it's not as good as I thought it was when you
Yeah,
listen to the playback.
especially with stuff like accents and dynamics and things, like your grace notes might not be as graceful as you want them to be. Your accents might be there. Like, it's
Yeah.
just good to look at it. And so I think that's kind of why. And then I got a great response. And with all the shit and negativity on the internet, like, it seems like for the most part, at least in the drum community, like the drum online world, like, it's really supportive
There's a lot of love. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
people
that's
are really
great.
cool in the drum. I love that about the drum community. I think it's different than other, communities and niches and stuff. The drummers are overall pretty supportive. You don't get a lot of hate. Everybody pretty much respects each other, and I like that. So, and one of the things I think drummers struggle with is actually learning the any type of recording process or filming yourself. Like, hey, we're drummers, right? And we're not the best techie people sometimes. So I remember I went through like a huge learning curve when I started doing the online stuff. It took me forever to figure that out. So what was that like for you getting into it? Being like,
Well,
okay, I'm gonna build a drum studio or whatever you wanted to do at that point and start getting into that.
so at first I think I just videoed something on my phone, and then I recorded it on, like, through Logic, right? So then I,
Hmm.
I added it together in Logic, but the sound was way off, and that was a struggle. And then I got a better camera, and then I got more cameras, but I have a nicer camera, and then I have like this. I mean, it's just the basement. I just have this black curtain up so that in post I make it way blacker. And I saw that there was a drummer online called Brett Klur, he's a really good drummer, and he's a South African guy. And he just had a video. He's like, I just put this black curtain up and then I darken the background. And I was like, oh, I'll just do that. That's easy because I don't want to paint the walls.
Hmm.
Um, and then so I got it visually looking nice, but then the audio was not looking so nice. And then you out of nowhere, this is what I mean by the drum community. Like, there's nice people out there. You were like, hey man, like, I really want you to help you out with your drum sound. And you sent me a link to your audio program.
Modern Drum
Uh,
Academy. Yeah, yeah.
and I followed the steps through that. You're a very good teacher, very concise. And
Thanks,
fortunately,
bro.
I use Logic, you use Logic. And
Right.
because my wife is, the irony of it all is my wife's an audio engineer.
Oh no way! You didn't tell me that, dude. Wow.
She was back in the day, but back in the day of like analog, she used to work at a recording studio in Redondo Beach called Total Access, and she recorded Pennywise records and
Oh,
all.
legit.
Yeah, yeah, and so she knows a ton, and she's a singer, and she knows all this stuff. I
Awesome.
made dude, essentially, because she's like an engineer and like I don't know. Anyway,
Wow.
so I'm like, I just kind of want to play the drums, but she, like when I told her I wanted to use Logic, she was like, oh, that's I use the industry standard. I
The
use
Pro
Pro Tools.
Tools. Yeah.
Stormed off, and she hasn't talked to me since. And and so I was trying to figure out Logic, and I got it. It was okay, but it still sounded really muddy. And then offered to help, which I'm very grateful for. And that program really does go through in Logic specifically for me was great. I'm sure if you have a different DAW, you can apply it to that, but it was just
Right.
like, here's what I'm doing in Logic. This is what you have in Logic. Just do this. And I did all that. And then also you recommend some plugins that I didn't have, those Waves plugins, and those were good. And so
Sweet.
those
Yep.
helped a lot as well. And then also using some of the stock plugins in Logic, and that's really helped the drums sound like way better. So like they say, and I'm getting, I texted you about it, but I've been getting a lot of comments as well, like the drums are sounding sick and blah blah blah. So
Dude, I
it's
saw
helped.
that the other day. Yeah, on since you've been posting on it, people are noticing, and that's always, I mean, that's
Yeah.
just,
So
shows
for
that it
anyone
works.
listening, that is from Eric's help here. That's what helped like elevate it to a more professional sound.
Thanks,
Uh,
Steve, man.
yeah, no, it's great. Thank you. It's
Yeah,
really kind of here.
and you know what? It's kind of a cool story, like for everybody listening. Like, I think we started talking on Instagram way before even like the
I started
recording
following
stuff.
you. I started following you because
Is
I
that?
like
Oh, dude, that's
what?
cool. I couldn't remember. It was a while, and we started watching each other's videos and liking stuff. So I do want to say, like, guys, it's worth it to be on Instagram if you're trying to do stuff with drumming and make progress in your drumming, because it is a cool platform that allows you to meet other drummers, right? And you could just send a DM, and you never know, hey, something cool can come from that. You guys can help each other. And so we were already kind of, in touch on Instagram. So when I started seeing you posting like, hey, you're dialing in your studio and you were doing some like stories that was like, does anybody know how to, set this up or use this or something like that? And that's when I was like, you know what? I just finished the whole course on recording drums and producing pro drums from your home studio, and I was like, I think I can help you with this, man. And it just so happened to be that you had the Logic, you had all that same stuff. It was just a perfect little match. So yeah, it's been cool. It's been really cool working with you.
No, it's great. And you also at the just to tag onto that, you have a the last few videos in the program are all about Final Cut Pro, which I just bought. And I because I at
Oh,
first
nice.
I was using iMovie
Yeah.
because I only had the one camera. And I think honestly for Instagram videos, one camera vertical is best, but I want to start posting stuff on YouTube. And then I've had so many people be like, I want you to play like streaming and stuff like that. And so I got a couple other cameras, and if I want to at least film YouTube videos, I like to have the different angles. And so the Final Cut
Right.
allows you to have different, like more than two cameras, I think. And so it was helpful having that as well because I'm new to that program, and it is easy, but it's not as easy as iMovie.
Yeah, and you know what? Everything has a learning curve. Like, learning the recording process, learning the video process, it takes time. And sometimes you
Yeah.
just want to get in and play drums and record something, but you're like, oh yeah, I gotta, do this, do that. And so, you know, a lot goes into it, guys. A lot goes into the videos and the drum lessons and the stuff like that. So, if you've done it yourself, you know what we're talking about. And if you want to get into it, it's totally worth it, though. It's so much fun, and it's a great
Yeah,
way to
I
really,
would.
yeah.
Yeah, I recommend checking out your program because it's very like in depth and it goes through all the things. So you can just, I mean, you probably have to make slight adjustments based on because my room's different from your room or whatever. But
Right.
when I sent you my mix and sorry, I showed you my mix and then I sent you the tracks unmixed. like they were pretty close when you
They
came
were.
back.
They
They
were, yeah.
were. I just copied what you did. So it's a great program. And then for video stuff, I because that's gotten a little bit more complex on my end. I don't have them all set up now, but um,
Yeah, you have the what's it called, Steve? The ATEM.
I have
Uh,
an 8M ISO Pro, and so it's the
right.
ISO Mini Pro. It has four channels. I have four cameras. So I have this camera. I have one up there. I have one for my feet, and then I have one back there. And you can switch from one to the other. So for teaching, it's great because if I have an
Absolutely.
online student and I'm like, this is what my feet are doing, I can just push the button and be like, this is my feet, and then or overhead or whatever. And then for recording and then editing, you can, because it's the ISO, it isolates each channel and sends them all to the hard drive. So when I put that into uh, Final Cut or iMovie or whatever editing software you're using, everything is synced. The audio is synced and every video is synced. So you don't have to bring them in separately and line them up. They're just plopped
That
together.
makes it so much easier. Yeah.
That's what I got. And this is the setup my drum teacher, Tim Metz, uses. I think he's got the 8 channel A10, but this one's fine for me. Um, and this that he's the one who sort of showed me how he does it. Because when I do lessons with him, it's really helpful. Because if he's like showing a jazz thing, and it's like a real coordination thing, like,
Yeah.
something is wonky, let's say, switching to the close up of his hands or the overhead or his feet or whatever, really helpful. If you're just starting out, just use your phone. My wife's got one of the new iPhones. It's better than all these cameras combined. So, what else do I use? That's kind of it. Oh, the other thing is because I want to at least try streaming. And I don't, I've had a few people, some very kind people, like one of the guys, like a gamer kind of guy who streams on Twitch, and another guy is a drummer, uh, who who um, who drums on Twitch, and it's that's really confusing. I don't know what the hell's going on there because you need all these programs to just get it to work.
Really. I've never even looked into that. Yeah.
I just think it might be fun because some people are like, we want you to play like some 41 stuff. They want full
Yeah.
version. It might be
Oh,
fun.
yeah.
Like if people wanted to see me do like
Yeah. On the
all of
spot,
it does
streaming.
all it does is look infected or whatever one day, like just for
Yeah.
fun.
That's
Um,
so cool.
and so, but to get it going is this other huge. It's just making me feel old because because it's very video game heavy. I don't play video games, so like all of it just looks really like
Yeah.
loud
Yeah.
and confusing to me. But I'm hoping to figure that out in the next couple weeks, and then I can do that like once every week or so. I'll go on there and give it a try at least. And then, like I was saying, I want to do lessons, which is another thing. Again, and you've been doing that, and you're very good at explaining things, and you come up with cool ideas that you make in your on your YouTube channel and the
Thanks,
little
man.
quick snippets on Instagram. All the linear stuff's really fun. But I never taught anything before. But I think again, talking to you and also talking to Tim, my regular teacher, um, everybody has sort of said that like the another way to level up your playing
Is
is to
teaching.
to teach it because and
Right.
like I said, I'm so green at it, but I had my first lesson yesterday actually with a guy I just met on Instagram, and already I know exactly what you're talking about because I have to like I have to like I started explaining something as if I was explaining it to somebody who already knew what the hell I was talking about, and I was like, wait a minute, I need to like return to a level where this is
Right.
new. And so
Yeah.
you have to be able to explain it and then also I can only imagine explain it in the same thing in different ways to different people because everybody learns differently allows you or forces you really to really like internalize because
Right.
I everything out I transcribed the lesson for them And I was like, oh, I was like, wait a minute, I never really thought that like, this is how that rudiment worked when you play it backwards or whatever it was. I'm like, oh, okay, because writing it out
Yeah.
definitely helped.
Yeah,
So that was
teach
cool.
that is a really good thing to note. I mean, teaching forces you to know the subject way deeper to be able to break
Yeah,
it down, and it's just, and then what I've realized too is when you teach something, it sticks with you long term. It sticks with you better. I feel like you internalize it and remember it even better because you have to
yeah,
break it down into small chunks. And yeah, there's a lot of great teachers online, and it's super fun to get into that. I even as a drummer, teach. You can always teach somebody something, right? Everybody
yeah,
knows a little bit more than somebody, so you can always find something to pass down. But you're a pro drummer, and you've done so much in your drumming. It makes sense for you to take some of that knowledge of all of those years and all of that experience that you have, and now all of the drumming experience you've learned on top of that of technique and all of these better things, pushing yourself past that, passing that down to other drummers, right? It's super fun, it's super cool, and we can do it now with things
yeah,
like the once you learn how to record and video and stuff like that, you can do it. It's all
yeah.
there.
It's changed everything really, and it's allowed you to do it from, expand your reach beyond just like the people who live within like a 5 mile
I
radius
mean,
here.
you're in Australia right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm talking to you. I'm talking to
yeah.
you on the other side of the world. Just for anybody who doesn't know, Steve's 17 hours ahead right now. It's a different day.
Yeah, right,
So
right. I know.
just setting up this interview was like we had to do a lot of math, okay?
Yeah, I know, I know. Well, that's the other thing I got to figure out because I want to do lessons and offer them online, but I got to figure out like a scheduling type of thing where people can book it in whatever time zone they're in, but they know that what my window is. My
Yeah.
window is this section of my day, wherever the hell you are.
I
So
think Calendly, I think there's that site Calendly is good and it
okay,
lets you do that. Check that one out. Yeah, that's that
I'll
I
check
think it
that out.
converts I think it converts time zones, but you have to double check. I'm not sure, but
Yeah, I'll look into it, but I mean, again, it's like getting it all up and running. And this to me, like I've never been a techie guy. I don't care. I just want like the thing I like to get technical about is the drums. But like
right.
what I want is everything to set up, and then I leave it alone, and then
Right.
it works when I turn a switch on.
Right.
Um, and then get into the other, like I can spend, I think it's probably like a symptom of my ADHD, like where everything else is chaos, but I can hyper focus on the most mundane thing. My wife was like, well, what are you doing down there all the time? And it's like, well, I got to figure out this part. Why? It doesn't, it does matter. But like you were saying, my whole journey, I wouldn't have wanted to teach had I not done sort of the preparation I've been doing the last, let's say, 4 years, because I didn't want to pass on bad. Like I guess I've become a stickler for technique because dude, I've spent so much money on physio to fix my arm, and if you can
Wow.
avoid that, um, and it's all my fault from playing incorrectly. But if you can avoid that from the get-go, you'll save yourself a lot of trouble. And also you can play more stuff, right? Like there's
Right.
certain things like you just can't play unless you know a technique to do it easily, or it just won't sound good. So I'm glad I did that work and like was able to at least look at myself with an impartial, as much as impartial as you can be, and be like, that's a problem. I need to fix it. And I've been fortunate to have people who are better than me, or have better technique than me, or to just tell me what to do and actually listen to them.
Right. Yeah, that's really good advice, Steve. Thank you, man. That sounds great. And you know what? Um, we should do this again. There's a lot we can go into even deeper on drumming. So guys, if you're not following Stevo, I'll put all of his links in the show notes or in the comment below. So check that out and go check him out on Instagram. And if you want to get a Zoom lesson with him, I'm sure he's going to have some stuff available for that. But I'll put the link to the Modern Drum Academy, the stuff we talked about for recording and video recording. And if I probably missed some questions, guys, I know you're hit some comments up, guys. Leave a comment if there's something that you liked about this, or something that you wanted to know. Maybe we'll do another show in the future at some point with Steve. It's been super fun, man. Is there anything else you want to cover before we end the little podcast interview here?
No, I just thanks for your help. Help me get everything set up here, and it's starting to sound really good. So I appreciate that, and it's been fun chatting with you. It's cool that we were like
Yeah, finally
developing a
doing it.
But
Yeah.
I lived in California for 15 years, but
We
now
missed
we're doing.
we darn it, we missed each other, but you know what? At least it's happening now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll be there. I'll be there in January, I think. So I'll come and we'll go have a beer or something.
Dude, definitely hit me up, all right? Let's do it.
Yeah, for
All right.
sure.
All right,
All right.
Steve.
Thanks,
Have a
buddy.
good day, man. It's
You
nighttime
too.
for me. It's your day. It's nighttime for me, so I'm gonna go have some dinner.
Okay. All right. See you
See you,
later.
man. All right.
Later.